Hey, guys.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, virgin number 2.
Bah. Wrong. You're on your own, buddy.
You and Caitlin?
No, not Caitlin.
Well, then who, Madonna?
Tessa. Yeah.
Tessa Campanelli?
Hey, man, we were just fooling around. She got carried away. Who could blame her?
Wait. What happened to Caitlin?
Caitlin can take her time and wait for the right moment. Meanwhile, I get laid.
Hello, Degrassi fans, and welcome to the Degrassi Kid Podcast, where each week we break down the history and impact of our favorite teen TV show. I'm Jocelyn, and this week I have a question for you. What's your favorite part of the Degrassi Schools Out movie? Is it the infamous moment when Caitlin Ryan says, "You were effing Tessa Campanelli"? Or when the Zit Remedy, Joey, Snake, and Wheels spend all summer long working on a card together? Or maybe you like the end of the movie, when Simon and Alexa, Degrassi's high school sweethearts, settle down and get married. Well, either way, how would you feel if I told you that all of that almost never happened at all? I had the incredible opportunity to sit down and read the original treatment for Degrassi Schools Out, written a full 2 years before the film was even released. And I can tell you, it was meant to be a completely different movie. Joey gets married, a main character ends up dead, and maybe, just maybe, it's actually Caitlin who spends the entire summer cheating on Joey. This week, I'm going to take you behind the scenes on the original script for Degrassi Schools Out, and on Patreon, we'll talk about how these changes could have impacted the future of Degrassi: The Next Generation. If Joey gets married in high school, what does that mean for the future of his stepson Craig, his daughter Angela, or even his on-again, off-again relationship with Caitlin Ryan? Would they have ended up together instead? We're going to break it all down for you, and as always, it's only going to happen here, on the last episode of the year for the Degrassi Kid Podcast. Before we talk about what didn't happen in Degrassi Schools Out, let's quickly recap what did happen. We open the movie at Degrassi's graduation. Fan favorite characters like Lucy, Snake, and Caitlin all walk across the stage in their cap and gown, ready to take on the rest of their lives. Quickly, drama ensues when Joey, who's been held back a year, proposes to Caitlin at her graduation party. She says, "No way, we're way too young. We have the rest of our lives ahead of us. What are you thinking?" Joey's obviously hurt by this, so he gets upset and leaves the party. But on the way out, he bumps into Tessa Campanelli, who innocently is just looking for a ride home. She's also broken up with her boyfriend, and she's feeling pretty upset. Well, that innocent ride home quickly turns into a fling that lasts all summer long. Joey starts hooking up with Tessa in secret. And Joey doesn't know it, but she ends up getting pregnant and later has an abortion. Throughout all of this, Joey and Caitlin are going through their usual on-again, off-again relationship until finally they get back together and have sex. Caitlin says she's so happy they could each lose their virginities to each other and share their first time together. Joey doesn't offer to tell her the truth, that he's actually been having sex with Tessa this entire time. So Joey and Caitlin are officially back together, and she's none the wiser. Later on, at an end-of-summer party, Caitlin hears a conversation between Snake and Joey. Snake is really upset that Joey has spent all summer long dating Caitlin and sleeping with Tessa. In a fit of rage, Caitlin Ryan reacts with this.
"Tessa Campanelli? You were fucking Tessa Campanelli?"
For Caitlin, this is the final straw. How could he do this to her? And the two finally break up for good, leaving Joey with no Caitlin and no Tessa. Snake decides to go for a walk and cool down a bit after his big fight with Joey. So far, Snake's summer hasn't really been all that bad. He decided he wanted to be a lifeguard so he could be surrounded by hot women in bikinis all day long. He daydreamed about a woman crying for help in the water. He'd bravely go out and rescue her, and she'd be so grateful that she'd have sex with him. Snake's biggest gripe about summer is that he was still a virgin. But now his daydream is about to come true, and it quickly is going to turn into a real nightmare when one of his friends actually starts drowning and screaming for help. Snake ends up rescuing her, but it isn't the Prince Charming moment he was hoping for. Sure, everyone's congratulating him for being a hero, but he's traumatized. He just watched one of his close friends almost drown to death. Meanwhile, we learn that while all of this was happening at the party, Wheels and Lucy got into a car accident. Lucy wanted to pick up some beer and chips to keep the party going, and Wheels reassured her he could still drive, even though he had been drinking. I mean, he does it all the time, right? Clearly, he was wrong, because now he's responsible for the death of a young child. Lucy's barely made it out alive, and now she's blind and paralyzed, maybe for life. This moment is made to feel even more heartbreaking because we just spent all summer following Lucy and Caitlin as they prepare for university, ready to take on the rest of their lives together. And now, because of Wheels and his dumb decision to drink and drive, it's all been taken away from her. The Degrassi Schools Out movie was one of the most ambitious projects Degrassi ever took under their wing, going into production with a budget of almost $2 million. However, some fans thought the series finale was too dark. A summer movie filled with car crashes, abortions, and multiple death scares? I mean, I know real life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, but they could have lightened up a little bit. We want to see our future characters grow up and have happy endings and fall in love, get their dream jobs, right? Well, I have to say, compared to the original script, this final version of Degrassi is a lot more lighthearted and has a lot more happy endings for its characters. So now that we're all caught up on the final movie, let's take a look at the original script for Degrassi Schools Out and how it almost changed the history of Degrassi as we know it. But first, it's time to tell you about our sponsor. This month, Evie Treasure's Etsy shop is helping me mail out Degrassi packages inspired by the next generation. If you're a fan of Craig, Marco, Eli, Spinner, Claire, you will love this month's mail out. We're giving out pins, stickers, buttons, and because it's the holidays, I included a very special gift from a very good friend of mine. Sign up before December 31st to receive your December mail-out package and use code Degrassi Kid at Evie's Etsy shop. Thank you to Evie Treasure's Etsy shop for supporting the podcast.
Lucy Fernandez, class valedictorian and scholarship winner.
Yes.
Any comments?
Why, yes, darling. My future's so bright, I gotta wear shades.
So what is it that makes these stories so different? Why is the original script for Degrassi Schools Out so much different than the final movie we get in 1992? Well, let's start off with the premise. Both the script and the movie start at the exact same time. They both start at the summer after high school graduation. Except in the original script, the main idea is that Lucy is making a movie, and she's enlisted some of her Degrassi friends to help her out. Now, it doesn't seem like this would make that big of a difference, but it's actually one part of the plot that drives a lot of future events for the Degrassi kids. It's kind of like that running thread that keeps us moving all throughout the summer. But the biggest thing it does, and the most surprising, is that it brings Caitlin and Snake together because they're playing the two romantic leads of Lucy's movie. Dun, dun, dun! Yeah, in the script, Caitlin and Snake get paired up together and spend the summer as these two kind of love interests who really start to fall in love with each other. The lines get blurred between the feelings of the characters they're playing and the feelings they really have for each other. So obviously, this changes quite a few things, actually, because in the movie, Caitlin and Snake never really interact with each other. But I do still think there's a nugget of this romance that does make it into the final film. Because as we remember, Snake is really passionate about the fact that Joey's been cheating on Caitlin. He calls Joey out multiple times throughout the film. And, you know, he's really the one that ends up telling Caitlin that Joey's been cheating on her.
You're just so full of yourself. Joey Jeremiah, what a studly guy. Let's recap the Jeremiah summer, shall we? See what a swell and decent human being you've been.
You have to listen to this.
No, you're gonna listen to me. Joey Jeremiah spends his summer dating Caitlin.
Shut up.
And fucking Tessa. Oh, what ethics. What a hero. Let's have a great big hand, shall we? Big round of applause, hey? Yes, all right.
I think this big emotion from Snake makes a little more sense when you know that he and Caitlin were meant to have feelings for each other. It shows us that this isn't just about Snake being upset by Joey's actions, but more so that he really cares for Caitlin as a person. And it makes sense because now that Caitlin graduated a year early, she would have spent her 12th grade year with Snake and taking classes with them, and they would have really grown a lot closer too, right? And what I also think is really funny about this is it's actually a nod to real life. Stacey Mistician, who plays Caitlin Ryan, she always says in interviews that she knew that she never wanted to date Pat Mastroianni. He plays Joey. She never wanted to date Pat because she thought it was just way too cliche, right? Like dating your love interest in a movie or a TV show was just way too Hollywood, way too stereotypical, and she knew that she never wanted to do that. but she does admit that she always had a crush on Stefan, who played Snake. So this idea of putting Snake and Caitlin together would actually be very, very cute and kind of interesting, knowing that there was some real life crushes going on between the Degrassi cast. And of course, even more than that, it could potentially change the entire future of Degrassi. Both Caitlin and Snake and Joey all play a huge role in the 2001 reboot when they come back for the next generation. So if Caitlin and Snake were together in Degrassi Schools Out at the end of high school, how could that change the future of the show? We'll end up talking about that more over on Patreon, but for now, Caitlin says that the reason she likes Snake is because he's easy to talk to. She says that Joey is always getting defensive about how smart she is and thinks she's talking down to him because he's so dumb, as he says. And she likes that she can talk to Snake without having to worry about making him feel bad or feel uncomfortable. And Snake says that he really likes Caitlin because she just makes him feel so relaxed and normal. He says usually he's so nervous around girls, but with Caitlin it's different. She's always making him laugh with all of her witty and dry comments, and they have a really good time together, he says. Now, despite them having feelings for each other, it doesn't actually go anywhere in the beginning. Caitlin says that at the end of the day, she's still with Joey, and she still has to be respectful of their relationship, and she doesn't want to cheat on Joey with Snake. Which is a very respectful and mature response from Caitlin, and makes it even more juicy when we learn what Joey's been up to all summer long. Joey Jeremiah. Now, the core of Joey's story is still pretty much the same. Caitlin is so busy doing something else for the summer that she's hardly had time for a boyfriend. So Joey ends up spending the summer with Tessa Campanelli. That stuff is all still the same. His goal in the movie is pretty clear. He wants to lose his virginity before the end of the summer. And he hopes to do so with Caitlin, but he ends up actually losing it to Tessa. Now, the main difference, though, is that in the script, another one of Joey's goals is that he wants to get a job so he can drop out of high school and not have to finish his senior year. He tries to convince his parents that it's a good idea by saying, look at Uncle Tony. He didn't finish the 10th grade, and now he owns a bunch of pizzerias. Of course, they don't buy it. But Joey's storyline in the script is a lot more intense than what happens in the movie. We'll remember that he actually gets Tessa pregnant, but he never learns about it because she secretly has an abortion, right? Well, in the script, Tessa's pregnancy is actually a pretty big deal that everybody knows about, and it changes the entire outcome of the movie. When Joey finds out that she's pregnant, it actually motivates him to become more responsible. And he says that the right thing to do is marry Tessa Campanelli and start a family together. Isn't that crazy? Oh my God, I was shook. But you might be thinking, Jocelyn, why doesn't Tessa also have an abortion in the script? I mean, they're both teenagers who hardly know each other. They accidentally got pregnant. Why is she having his baby? Well, in the script, Tessa's actually extremely anti-abortion. There is no way she will even consider it. Tessa strongly believes that having an abortion is equivalent to murdering a baby, and so she's going to give birth to Joey's baby no matter what. Like, she might consider adoption, but either way, this baby is going to be born. And so in the script, because of all this going on, it's actually Joey who breaks up with Caitlin. He confesses everything to her, that he's been cheating with Tessa and she's pregnant. And he says, you know, Caitlin, you and I are officially over because I want to do the right thing and choose my baby. What? Oh my God. Anyway, Caitlin gets upset naturally, but it's not because she's been cheated on. Because you remember she's had this whole summer fling with Snake, right? So it's actually great for her that Joey's ending the relationship because she kind of gets out of everything scot-free. But instead, she's actually really upset with Joey because she's scared for him. In her opinion, they're kids, and he's throwing his whole life away for this girl he barely knows to raise a baby together. Like, she thinks that it's crazy and feels almost more irresponsible than anything, right? And it's so crazy to think that we could have had a Degrassi The Next Generation where Joey Jeremiah and Tessa Campanelli's, that their baby goes to junior high school with Emma and her friends. Can you imagine? Oh my God, I'm flabbergasted by this whole idea. But anyway, it's so interesting to see the changes between the script and the movie. Like, I wonder why they changed Tessa's opinion on abortion so drastically. Like, she went from abortion his murder to, hey, I'm going to quietly sneak off to a clinic and go have an abortion. And I think that's totally a realistic story, but I'm so curious as to why it was such a drastic change from the original idea. Whereas I find some of the other changes they made in the script, you can kind of still see how they got from like point A to point B, but this one decision feels really out of left field for me. I think it's crazy. And I also want to know why they were so adamant that the story had to end with a wedding, because Joey and Tessa's marriage plot ends up going to Simon and Alexa. And it makes sense that they get it because they were like a very intense couple in junior high school, and anyone was going to get married in high school, it would be Simon and Alexa. So that makes sense. But I wonder why they decided the story still had to end in a marriage. If I had to guess, I would say it's probably to show a comparison to what Joey and Caitlin could have been if they just stayed together, and having Joey and Caitlin not get married still really plays into that on again, off again kind of romance that they've been having for so many years. And one last thing that I thought was so interesting too is that in the original script, Joey's parents do not approve of his marriage to Tessa. They are not on board with it. And they actually give him a lecture on teen marriage statistics. You know, they say it doesn't work out, it always ends up in divorce, that kind of thing. And in the final movie, we still see some of this conversation happen, but instead it's happening between Caitlin and Lucy. This is what they have to say about Simon and Alexa's wedding.
We're getting married right out of high school. Talk about a nightmare.
I don't know. They really love each other.
Caitlin, check the statistics on teen marriage. They haven't even had sex yet. Maybe they don't get along in bed.
It's just so interesting to see how many pieces are still there from the original script, but in such a different way with such different characters. Like, that's an example of how I can see that the script naturally progressed this teen marriage statistic conversation in comparison to something like Tessa's abortion, which is so drastically different. Now, before we move on to Joey's wedding, there's still one thing we haven't talked about. The fact that Caitlin has an emotional relationship with Snake. How does Joey feel about all of this? Now, despite the fact that Joey's actually been off starting a family with another woman, Joey feels upset, and he mostly feels betrayed by his best friend. Like, how could Snake do this to him? And it causes a lot of tension between them. So much so that when Joey's planning his wedding and he's trying to decide who his best man is going to be, he naturally was going to pick Snake in the beginning. But now he's decided that not only is Snake not being in the wedding, he's not invited at all anymore. And instead, the role of best man goes to Wheels. Now, before we get to the wedding, let's buckle up a bit, because I have to tell you the tragic, tragic tale of Derek Wheeler and why he doesn't make it to Joey's wedding. But first, before I tell you about the most devastating part of Degrassi School's Out, I want to say a nice warm welcome to all our new Patreon subscribers. Sawyer, Stephanie, Becca, Brittany, Mac, Hannah, and the Degrassi Generations Facebook group all signed up for mail-out packages this month. Thank you so much. And of course, a warm welcome to both Mark, Vickers, and Katie for joining the Patreon. Your support means the world to me, and it's the reason I get to deep dive into behind-the-scenes topics just like this one. If you want some more bonus content from the Degrassi Kid podcast, head on over to patreon.com/Degrassi Kid, and we'll welcome you in the next episode. But for now, let's talk about the tragedy of Wheels.
Snake, are you sure you don't want a beer? There's lots in the fridge.
Wheels, that's your third.
So? I replace what I drink. My boss is cool.
That's not my point.
Well, what is your point?
Wheels' main role in the Degrassi School's Out movie is to be a listening ear as Joey and Snake talk about their summer of trying to get laid. The whole time he's mainly fixing up his car, which, as we know, later results in him getting into an accident and killing a kid. But in the original script, Wheels actually has far less screen time because Joey and Snake are avoiding each other. They both have pretty big secrets that the other one can't find out about. Snake wants to keep it a secret that he has a crush on Caitlin, and there's no way Snake can find out about Tessa because he would just tell Caitlin. He spends every day with her. But now it's the end of the summer, and Lucy's movie is finally finished. It's totally complete. And her sweet boyfriend Bronco wants to throw a premiere party at his beach house. Now, the idea that there's an end of summer party is the same in both the movie and the script, but the main difference here is that the party is meant to celebrate Lucy and get everyone together to watch her movie and see all of their cameos in it, right? All of that big drama that we saw around Joey and Tessa and Caitlin and Snake, At this point in the script, it's already happened, right? Whereas in the movie, this final party is kind of where all the big drama happens with the drowning and the car crash and Joey and Caitlin. And this is the moment where we now really see Wheels. Before the party, Lucy and Bronco go to check on him. They want to invite him to their party, and they also want to see if he can drive them out to the beach house. And this is where we find out that Wheels has been casually drinking all summer long. Lucy is, of course, immediately concerned, and she shares her fear that Wheels might need some help. And Bronco steps in and says maybe he should be the one who drives them all to the party instead. But Wheels gets defensive, and he starts getting very angry. He says, it's not a big deal. I do it all the time. You guys just have to trust me, he says. So they do. Bronco and Lucy climb into the car and they take off to the party. And again, compared to the movie, we don't actually spend a lot of time at this party. We see some establishing shots of the Degrassi kids arriving with like booze and they're ready to all hang out. But then after a few moments, all the guests start to wonder, like, where are Bronco? Where are Lucy? It's their party and they're not here yet. And that's when we cut back to the scene where Wheels is wrapped up in a blanket. He's covered in blood. Sirens are blaring in the background. And we find out that because he'd been drinking and driving, he got into a car accident. Just like the movie, he ends up with only some scrapes, some bruises, some scratches. He's really fared out the best out of everyone in this situation. But this time, it's Bronco who ends up paralyzed from the car crash. He'll never be able to walk again in his life. And it's actually Lucy who ends up dead. Yeah, Degrassi's summer finale movie was meant to end with Wheels getting drunk and killing Lucy. Oh, my heart sinks into my stomach when I really think about it. Like, from the beginning of the script, Lucy was set up to be that one character who was really going to have a happy ending. Like, she was not focused on any drama. She was focused on her dreams. She was in a loving relationship. And she was literally on a way to a party where her best friends were going to celebrate her and her accomplishments. And she's the one who ends up dead because her friend chose to drink and drive and she got in the car. Oh, I think if this had been the ending that was in the final movie, fans would have been like really upset. I think Lucy would have been talked about in the same way that we talk about like JT and Cam and Adam, and really debating on if she needed to be killed off for this story to be told. But what I do appreciate about this version of the script is that it really does highlight Lucy in the film. Like, we remember she always had a camera in her hand. She was making videos for LD. She filmed the Zitz music video, and she made her first feminist horror film called It Creeps. Like, Lucy loved making movies, and this storyline would have been really on brand for her and given us a lot of throwbacks to the original series. And I think it would have also led us into a false sense of security that she was the one character who was going to make something big out of this summer and not just be involved in drama, which makes it hurt so much more when she gets killed. Oh my God. And it's also interesting to think, you know, how could this moment affect the future of Degrassi? Because obviously she would never return again, but perhaps she would be memorialized in the reunion, or maybe would have finally gotten to see her parents in the movie. But either way, you know, Wheels still ends up going to adult prison. Everybody's upset with him. All of that part still stays exactly the same. And it's actually Snake who goes to visit Wheels in prison for the very first time. We'll remember in the movie it's Joey. However, this time it's Snake who kind of takes on the brunt of getting everyone to forgive Wheels for his actions. However, Wheels being in prison, of course, means that he can't be the best man at Joey and Tessa's wedding. Before we talk about Joey and Tessa's big day, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of my Patreon subscribers. You guys have given me a year full of some of the best memories I could ever ask for. And as you know, one of the perks of being on Patreon is a shout out in the podcast. I want to say a huge thank you to Brittany B, Brittany M, Mac, Rebecca J, Rebecca from the Trail Mix Podcast, Sarahjei, Stevi, Alyssa, Georgia, Randy, Amber, Annie, Chrissy, Dave, Degrassi CSI, Evie, Glenn, the Hey Degrassi, Make This Reboot Count Facebook page, Holly J Wonders, Kat, Kylia, Maria, Najama, Owen, Rachel, Riley, Sam B, and Sam C, Shane, Shelby, Sarah, Susan, and Victoria. I can't believe that all of you are supporters of the Degrassi Kid Podcast, and I am so excited to tell you about Joey Jeremiah and his wedding to Tessa Campanelli. Before the wedding night, Joey throws himself a bachelor party with some of his more casual friends. This is where we start to see those cameos from like BLT and Simon and Yick, for example. Snake decides he's going to stop by the party and try to make amends with Joey. Snake's been dating Caitlin and he's very, very happy with her, but he feels really guilty about losing his best friend in the process. Joey actually forgives him, and the two end up spending some time together catching up. Joey tells Snake that he plans to drop out of school and get a job at his uncle's pizzeria. He wants to do the responsible thing and be there for Tessa while they raise a baby together. He says, "I guess in the end, I got what I wished for. I didn't want to spend another day in high school." Snake is surprised. He doesn't really think it's a good idea, but he's not there to judge. He's there to make up with his best friend. Snake also reveals that he brought a letter from Wheels. Wheels says he's sorry he had to miss the wedding. He's sorry for everything that happened with Lucy, but he's happy to see that Joey is truly happy. The beef between the Zit Remedy seems to be smoothed over and resolved rather easily, and it's not really clear if anything more comes out of Lucy's death. There wasn't like a funeral scene or a burial scene in the draft that I read. It just kind of comes off as this like really bad thing that Wheels did that everyone ends up forgiving him for by the end of the movie, which is kind of weird. But they could have had plans for a memorial scene. Like, this was just a very early draft that I read, and it might have made it into a later version. But anyway, Joey ends up forgiving Wheels, and he ends up forgiving Snake. He even tells Snake that if he wants to, he can bring Caitlin to the wedding, which is very interesting. Now, both the movie and the script end in almost the exact same way. We're at a wedding reception, and Joey and Caitlin are both going to reminisce about their relationship and what they could have been. In the movie, they watch as Simon and Alexa share their first dance. They talk about teen marriage statistics, and they wonder, would we have been happy if we got married? And in the script, the scene is a little more confrontational. Caitlin is really judging Joey for his decision to, in her opinion, throw his entire life away. But Joey stands firm that it's the right thing to do for Tessa and his baby. Caitlin makes one final jab saying, "I hope you don't become another teen statistic," and Joey replies with a cheeky one-liner. He says, "Statistics are for baseball, not for me and Tess." Oh my God. Like, I can just see, at the end of an episode, whenever they do like the freeze frame on that one-liner and then they play the Degrassi music out, that quote was totally written for that. Like, I can totally see the freeze frame. It's such a Joey thing to say. Joey and Caitlin, of course, also end the script reflecting on what they could have been if they just didn't cheat on each other. Now, there's so many questions on what the future of Degrassi would look like if this was the actual movie that happened. I mean, Joey marries Tessa. They have a baby. Caitlin ends up with Snake. Lucy ends up dead. Like, I don't think I could handle all of that. But if you want to chat with other Degrassi fans about how this script changes the future of Degrassi, you can head on over to patreon.com/Degrassi Kid. It's available to any tier, and we'll talk about it. But for now, it's actually quite interesting that even though the script is so much more dramatic than the final movie, you can still see how they got to the final film. Like, we still have a cheating scandal, we still have a car crash, a death, a wedding, a pregnancy. It's just really the intensity that's different in those stories. So now that we've talked about the film, let's wrap up our final thoughts. All in all, the Degrassi Schools Out script still follows the same characters and the same events, just shuffled around a bit and with less severe outcomes. In my opinion, there's three main differences between the final movie and the original script. Number one, Lucy's film project is a catalyst for most of the events, like Caitlin and Snake getting together or her own death scene. Number two, Snake and Caitlin's relationship changes the dynamic between Caitlin and Joey and the fact that he's been cheating on her. And number three, of course, Joey marries Tessa because she's having his baby. I mean, this causes a lot of drama. Like, he drops out of school, we find out she's anti-abortion. It's like a whole thing. Another thing that I also think is interesting is that characters like Melanie and Arthur and Kathleen don't end up in the final movie at all, despite them being huge characters in the series itself. It makes sense considering that the story is focusing on the graduating class, but it does seem strange that they're almost like completely omitted from the film. Like, Spike appears in 2 or 3 scenes, we see Yick at a couple parties, but it does just feel sort of lackluster and like there's a lot of characters who have unresolved endings. I would have liked to see maybe like even a cameo where the grade 11 class is watching them graduate or something like that. Or like they casually walk by having a conversation and then we turn to the graduating class, right? But one thing that I did really, really like that I think is interesting is to see this, how many things made it from the original script into the final film. Like, for example, Snake being so protective over Caitlin. I think it would be really cool to see how the story changed through each draft from script to script to script. Like, how do we get from Tessa feeling so strongly about abortion to her kind of casually having one that nobody knows about? You know what I mean? And why did they decide that Joey should end up alone rather than end up with Tessa or Caitlin? I don't know, but either way, I feel so lucky that I got to read this original script for Degrassi Schools Out, and even more lucky that I got to share it with you guys. Doing a podcast like this is so freaking cool, and I can't wait to talk about it on Patreon. But for now, let's listen in as Joey and Caitlin reminisce and wonder what the future could have been. Bye, guys.
Think they're gonna make it?
They look really happy together.
Do you ever think that we would have lasted?
Well, we'll never know, will we? We can't go back.
But we had some good times, right?
Yeah. We had some great times.
Tide is not on our side.